Have you ever encountered an angel? It's a question that may sound strange to some. But for many saints throughout history, it is a question rooted in truth. Imagine for a moment, one ordinary day, when your heart is heavy, your mind burdened, and your spirit seemingly lost. A divine presence suddenly appears. A being of light, gentle and powerful, speaks to you in a voice that resonates within your soul. This is not a dream or illusion, but a true encounter with an angel. Many of the world's most revered saints, from Saint Francis of Assisi to Saint Teresa of Avila, have shared stories of such mystical experiences. They described visions of angels guiding them, comforting them in times of despair, and providing wisdom that transcended human understanding. These experiences were not just fleeting moments of awe, they were transformative, shaping their lives, their faith, and their mission in profound ways. But here's the question we must ask. What do these mystical encounters with angels truly mean for us today? In a world dominated by logic, reason, and technology, can we still find room for the supernatural in our lives? Can we, too, experience moments of guidance and clarity, just as the saints did? And perhaps most importantly, what lessons can we draw from these sacred encounters that apply to our modern lives and careers? While it's easy to dismiss these stories as mere religious folklore or mystical fantasy, there are deep, valuable lessons embedded within them. The lives of saints like Saint Francis and Saint Teresa were not easy. They faced immense challenges, both in their personal lives and in their spiritual journeys. Yet, through their experiences with angels, whether literal or symbolic, they found strength, direction, and a deeper connection to their higher calling. This journey into the mystical experiences of saints and their encounters with angels is more than just a dive into the divine. It is an exploration of how we, too, can embrace faith, patience, and trust in the unseen forces that guide us through life. Their stories are not just about heavenly beings. They're about the transformation of the human spirit and the ability to find peace and purpose, even in the most chaotic and challenging times. So, let us begin this journey of discovery and reflection, as we explore the mystical experiences of the saints and the angels who guided them. We may just find that the lessons they learned in their encounters with the divine hold the keys to unlocking our own paths to fulfillment, success, and inner peace. Saint Francis of Assisi, one of the most beloved saints in the history of Christianity, is well known for his deep humility, his connection to nature, and his profound spiritual journey. But there is another aspect of his life that has fascinated generations: his mystical encounters with the divine, particularly his meeting with angels. Francis, born Giovanni di Pietro di Bernardone in Italy in 1181, lived a life that many would consider ordinary for the time. He was born into a wealthy family, and in his youth, he enjoyed a life of luxury and pleasure. However, after a series of events that included a military adventure and a long period of illness, Francis experienced a profound spiritual transformation that would shape his entire life. One of the most significant moments in his life occurred when he retreated to a remote place called the Mount of Laverna to spend time in prayer and contemplation. It was here, in the solitude of nature, that Francis experienced a divine vision that would forever change him. As he knelt in prayer, he felt a deep sense of peace and connection to God. But what followed was nothing short of miraculous. It is said that while praying, Francis had a vision of a seraphim, a high-ranking angel with 6 wings. The angel appeared to him in the form of a crucified figure, with wings spread out in a way that symbolized both the suffering and the glory of Christ. As Francis gazed upon this vision, he felt an overwhelming sense of compassion and love for all of creation. His heart was filled with divine grace, and in that moment, he was not only spiritually transformed but physically marked by the encounter. According to various accounts, Francis was later found to have received the stigmata, the wounds of Christ, piercings in his hands, feet, and side, This miraculous experience marked him as a living reflection of Christ's suffering. And it further solidified his role as a spiritual leader dedicated to humility and service. But what does this encounter with the divine and the angels teach us about our own lives and work today? Firstly, Francis's experience reminds us of the power of solitude and contemplation. In the busy, noise-filled world we live in, it's easy to become distracted and lose sight of our deeper purpose. Yet, Francis found clarity and divine guidance in the quiet moments of his life. It was in the silence of nature, far from the distractions of his wealthy life, that he was able to hear the divine call. This is a powerful lesson for us today, especially in the context of our careers and businesses. Sometimes, the most profound insights come not in the hustle and bustle of our daily routines, but in the moments of quiet reflection and stillness. Secondly, the vision of the seraphim and the stigmata serve as a reminder of the importance of embracing suffering and sacrifice. In a world that often prioritizes success, wealth, and comfort, we may shy away from challenges or avoid situations that cause us discomfort. But just as Saint Francis accepted his stigmata as a sign of his deep connection to Christ's suffering, we, too, can find meaning in our struggles. Whether in personal hardship or professional setbacks, the ability to endure and grow through adversity is one of the most important qualities in life and business. Saint Francis's encounter with the divine teaches us that through suffering, we can find spiritual growth and a deeper understanding of our purpose. Moreover, Saint Francis's relationship with the angels in his life reflects his unwavering faith in the unseen. He did not need to understand every detail of his vision or the angelic encounters to accept them as real. He embraced the mystery of the divine without questioning its validity. In the same way, we often have to trust in things we cannot fully comprehend. This is particularly true in the world of business, where we face uncertainty and unpredictability. Trusting in the process, having faith in our mission, and believing that things will align even when they seem unclear, is a crucial element of success. Saint Francis teaches us that faith in the unseen, the unexplainable, is often what guides us through life's challenges. Lastly, Francis's deep connection to nature and his empathy for all living beings show us the importance of compassion and service. His life was marked by a love for the poor, the sick, and the creatures of the earth. He did not seek power or riches for himself. Instead, he sought to serve others, following the example of Christ. In business, this lesson is invaluable. While success is often defined by profit, we must not forget the value of compassion, ethical practices, and the service of others. When we approach our work with empathy and a desire to contribute to the greater good, we create a legacy that transcends mere financial success. In this first part of our journey through the mystical experiences of saints, Saint Francis's encounter with the divine is a powerful reminder of the transformative power of spiritual experiences. The lessons he learned from his angelic encounter resonate with us today, teaching us about the importance of solitude, faith, embracing suffering, and living a life of service. These lessons are just as relevant in our modern lives as they were in the time of Francis, and they offer profound insights that can guide us in both our personal and professional journeys. Saint Teresa of Avila, one of the most influential women in Christian history, was a mystic, theologian, and reformer whose encounters with the divine helped shape her spiritual journey. Much like Saint Francis, her life was marked by a series of mystical experiences, many of which involved encounters with angels. These experiences were not mere visions, but transformative moments that shaped her understanding of God and the path she was called to walk. Born in 1515 in Spain, Teresa came from a noble family. Her early life, however, was far from the serene spiritual journey that would come later. In her youth, she faced significant health challenges, and her early years were marked by a deep inner struggle, balancing worldly pleasures with her growing desire for spiritual fulfillment. At times, She was caught between the expectations of her family and her own inner calling, making her spiritual journey all the more difficult. Her journey toward a life of deeper faith and mystical experiences truly began when she entered the Carmelite convent at the age of 20. Though initially hesitant, her time in the convent eventually led her to a profound spiritual awakening. It was here, in the quiet solitude of prayer and contemplation, that Teresa began experiencing the deep mystical encounters that would define her life and work. One of the most significant of these experiences occurred while Teresa was in prayer one day. She recounts a vision of an angel who appeared before her, holding a golden spear that was tipped with fire. The angel, with a look of intense love, proceeded to pierce her heart with the spear, filling her with such a deep, consuming love for God that she felt as if her soul was being lifted to heaven. This experience, which she described as a transverberation, was not just a vision, it was a deeply physical experience that changed the course of her life forever. Teresa's encounter with the angel left her spiritually transformed, with a newfound sense of divine calling and a desire to lead others into a deeper, more authentic relationship with God. But it was not just this one encounter that marked her spiritual life. Over the years, Teresa experienced numerous visions and angelic visitations, each one further deepening her understanding of God's love and presence. These experiences became the foundation for her writings and teachings, particularly her book The Interior Castle, which became one of the most important works on Christian mysticism. Teresa's mystical encounters with angels also had a profound impact on her understanding of prayer. She came to believe that prayer was not just an act of words or rituals, but an intimate conversation with God, an experience of the divine that transcended earthly boundaries. Through her encounters with angels, Teresa learned that true prayer required a deep surrender of the self and an openness to the transformative power of God's love. She wrote extensively about the stages of prayer, encouraging her fellow sisters and spiritual seekers to embrace a life of prayer that moved beyond the surface, leading them to a deeper union with God. What lessons can we draw from Teresa's mystical encounters with angels? First, her experiences remind us of the power of deep, intimate prayer. In today's fast-paced world, it's easy to fall into the trap of superficial prayer or meditation, prayers recited out of habit or ritual without true focus or intention. Teresa's encounters with the divine emphasize that prayer is not just a routine, but a conversation with God that requires sincerity, openness, and a willingness to listen. She teaches us that prayer is a transformative experience. It's not about what we say, but about allowing ourselves to be vulnerable and open to God's presence. Teresa's mystical encounters also highlight the importance of surrender and openness to divine guidance. Throughout her life, she was continually called to step outside her comfort zone, even in the face of doubt and resistance. Her obedience to God's will, despite the difficulties she faced, is a powerful example of faith in action. In our modern lives and careers, we too are often faced with moments when we must trust in a higher plan, even when the path ahead is unclear. Whether it's taking a leap of faith in a new career or pursuing a difficult project, Teresa's life teaches us that true success comes not from our own plans, but from aligning ourselves with divine purpose. One of the most striking aspects of Teresa's mysticism is her emphasis on love, the transformative, all-encompassing love that she believed was the essence of God's presence in the world. Through her angelic encounters, Teresa experienced love that was pure, overwhelming, and beyond comprehension. This love was not just a feeling, it was a force that propelled her forward, motivating her to serve others and live a life of profound compassion. In the world of business and leadership, we often think of success in terms of profit, strategy, and outcomes. Yet, Teresa's life reminds us that the greatest force in our work and lives is love, love for the work we do, love for the people we serve, and love for the mission we are called to accomplish. It is love that motivates us to push through challenges, to create with intention, and to lead with compassion. Moreover, Teresa's mystical experiences with angels also offer valuable insights into the nature of inner transformation. The encounter with the angel's spear pierced her heart and left her physically and spiritually changed. In a similar way, moments of inner transformation in our own lives can be painful, yet necessary for growth. Whether it's the pain of letting go of old habits, the discomfort of stepping into unknown territory, or the challenge of facing personal weaknesses, inner transformation requires us to embrace the discomfort and trust in the process of change. Finally, Teresa's life teaches us the importance of discipline and self-awareness. After her profound mystical experiences, she didn't simply sit back and wait for divine revelations. She took active steps to grow spiritually and to help others do the same. She founded convents, reformed the Carmelite order, and dedicated herself to a life of service. Her commitment to discipline in her spiritual practices serves as a reminder that while mystical experiences can be powerful, they must be coupled with consistent effort and a willingness to work hard in the pursuit of our goals. Saint Augustine of Hippo, one of the most influential figures in Christian theology, is another saint whose life was deeply shaped by mystical encounters with the divine. Known for his writings and sermons, particularly his Confessions and the City of God, Augustine's journey to faith was one of intense inner turmoil, self-reflection, and eventual divine revelation. Like many saints before him, Augustine's path to enlightenment was paved with both intellectual struggle and mystical experiences that altered the course of his life forever. Born in 354 CE in the North African city of Tagaste, Augustine's early life was filled with indulgence and search for meaning. He was a brilliant student and later became a teacher of rhetoric. But despite his intellectual achievements, he found himself drawn to worldly pleasures, rejecting the faith he had been born into. His struggles with sin, his search for truth, and his doubts about the nature of God were central themes in his life. And they were the very foundation for his most famous work, Confessions. However, Augustine's life took a dramatic turn when he encountered the teachings of Ambrose, the Bishop of Milan, who helped him understand the deeper spiritual truths of Christianity. But it wasn't until a mystical experience, one that involved an encounter with an angel, that Augustine's heart and mind were completely transformed. The most famous and pivotal moment of Augustine's conversion took place in a garden in Milan. It was here, after years of searching and questioning, that he heard a voice, which he believed was from God, calling him to take and read. Augustine had been reading the letters of St. Paul, but this moment was different. The voice he heard wasn't simply the echo of his thoughts or the sound of a distant memory. It was a divine intervention, guiding him to a specific passage that would forever change the direction of his life. In his Confessions, Augustine describes this moment as an epiphany. He writes about the sudden clarity he experienced when he understood that God was calling him. Not through a distant theological argument, but through a direct and personal encounter with the divine. The voice, which Augustine later realized was an angelic presence, filled him with a profound sense of peace and certainty. His soul was awakened, and he knew, without a doubt, that his search for meaning had finally come to an end. The angel's guidance and the lessons for today. Augustine's encounter with the divine, marked by the angelic voice, offers several lessons that are still relevant to us today. Perhaps the most important lesson we can draw from this experience is the idea of divine timing and guidance. Augustine spent many years searching for truth in worldly ways. Yet it was only when he surrendered his own understanding and allowed himself to be guided by God that he truly found peace. In our modern world, especially in business and personal development, we are often caught up in the desire to control every outcome and to seek success on our own terms. However, Augustine's story reminds us that divine timing is often different from our own expectations. Just as he heard the divine voice at a time when he had given up on his own efforts, we, too, must sometimes release our attachment to a specific outcome and trust in a higher plan. Furthermore, Augustine's experience with the voice that led him to read a passage from St. Paul teaches us about the importance of heeding the inner voice of guidance. In the world of business and career, we often face critical decisions that require deep introspection and clarity. In those moments, it is essential to listen to our intuition and the subtle nudges that guide us toward the right path. Just as Augustine heard a voice leading him to a moment of spiritual awakening, we can learn to recognize the guiding force that speaks to us in times of uncertainty. Whether it's a mentor, a divine prompt, or a deep inner knowing, we must learn to trust these moments of guidance and follow them, even if they seem unusual or unexpected. Another crucial lesson from Augustine's mystical encounter is the power of surrendering to God's will. Augustine's conversion wasn't simply about intellectual assent, it was about surrendering his will to a higher power. He let go of his pride, his past mistakes, and his doubts, and in doing so, he found spiritual freedom. In business, we can apply this lesson by recognizing that our efforts alone are not always enough. There are moments when we must surrender the need for control, allow ourselves to trust in something greater, and embrace the opportunities that come when we align ourselves with divine purpose. This act of surrender opens the door to new possibilities and leads us toward a life that is richer and more fulfilling than we ever imagined. Transformation through mystical encounters. Augustine's mystical encounter with the divine and his subsequent transformation from a life of indulgence and doubt to a life of faith and devotion speaks volumes about the power of spiritual awakening. His encounter with the angel wasn't just a moment of intellectual realization, it was a transformative experience that impacted every aspect of his life. He went on to become one of the most influential theologians in Christian history, shaping the doctrines of the Church and inspiring countless others with his writings. This transformation shows us that mystical encounters aren't limited to those who live in monasteries or remote places of prayer. They can happen to anyone, anywhere, at any time. The key is being open to the possibility of divine intervention, whether through angels, a sudden moment of clarity, or a deep inner knowing. These experiences can change the trajectory of our lives, helping us to break free from limiting beliefs and align with a higher purpose. In our work and lives, we can draw inspiration from Augustine's journey by recognizing that true success is not about striving alone, but about surrendering to the guidance of a higher power and trusting that we are on the right path. Augustine's story teaches us that success is a journey of transformation, not just in our careers but also in our hearts and minds. Saint Ignatius of Loyola, the founder of the Society of Jesus, Jesuits, is another saint whose mystical experiences profoundly influenced his spiritual journey and his approach to life and leadership. Born in 1491 in Spain, Ignatius came from a noble family and initially led a life of worldly ambition, focusing on military success and personal glory. However, a dramatic mystical encounter with the divine during his recovery from a war injury completely transformed his life, guiding him on a path of spiritual discovery and dedication to God's service. Ignatius's life before his mystical awakening was full of pride, ambition, and a desire for recognition. As a young man, he sought the glory of battle, eagerly pursuing a career as a soldier. But everything changed in 1521 when he was severely wounded during the Battle of Pamplona. While recovering from his injuries in a small town, Ignatius found himself with nothing to do but reflect on his life and read the few books available to him. Among these books were the lives of saints, which led him to contemplate the nature of true glory and the path to spiritual fulfillment. During this time of physical healing and spiritual introspection, Ignatius experienced a profound mystical encounter. One day, while reflecting deeply on the lives of saints and his own life, he had a vision in which he saw himself standing before the Virgin Mary. In this vision, Ignatius experienced the overwhelming presence of divine love and peace. He felt an intense calling to follow the path of the saints and dedicate his life to God's service. Leaving behind his former ambitions, this mystical experience became the turning point of his life, marking the beginning of his journey towards spiritual transformation. However, this mystical experience wasn't just a one-time event. Throughout his life, Ignatius experienced numerous other visions, dreams, and spiritual experiences that guided him along his path. He had deep encounters with divine grace and often experienced inner locutions, voices, that led him to make important decisions in his life. One of his most profound mystical experiences came when he was praying in a cave in Manresa, Spain. There, Ignatius experienced a powerful vision in which he saw the spiritual struggles of his own soul, as well as the path of surrender and obedience to God's will. This experience deeply shaped his understanding of spiritual discernment, which became central to the teachings of the Jesuits. Ignatius's mystical experiences were not just about visions or voices, they also involved deep inner transformations. As he reflected on his past sins and his desire for worldly success, he came to understand the importance of detachment and humility in following God's will. His mystical encounter with the divine challenged him to let go of his pride and to embrace a life of service, dedication, and total surrender to God. These themes of humility, discernment, and self-emptying were key elements of his spiritual path and would later become the foundation of the Jesuit order. Lessons from Saint Ignatius's mystical encounter. The mystical encounters of Saint Ignatius offer powerful lessons for our own spiritual and professional lives. One of the most important lessons we can draw from Ignatius's experience is the value of spiritual discernment. In today's world, we are constantly faced with choices, many of which involve balancing our professional ambitions with our personal values. Ignatius's life teaches us that true success and fulfillment come not from blindly following our own desires, but from carefully discerning God's will in every aspect of our lives. Ignatius's discernment process involved examining his thoughts, feelings, and actions to determine whether they aligned with God's calling for him. He encouraged others to do the same, teaching them to reflect deeply and to listen to the stirrings of their hearts when making important decisions. In the context of business and leadership, this concept of discernment is particularly relevant. Business decisions are often made quickly, and we can easily become caught up in the desire for success and recognition. However, Ignatius's emphasis on discernment challenges us to slow down and consider our motivations, our goals, and the impact of our decisions on others. Are we pursuing success for personal glory? Or are we following a path that aligns with our deeper sense of purpose and integrity? Ignatius's mystical experiences show us that discernment is the key to making wise decisions that lead to true fulfillment and long-lasting success. Another powerful lesson from Ignatius's life is the importance of humility and detachment. Before his mystical encounter, Ignatius was driven by pride and the desire for worldly recognition. After his encounter with the divine, however, he was transformed. His mystical experiences led him to embrace a life of humility, recognizing that true greatness lies not in personal achievements, but in serving others and living a life of service to God. In business and personal life, this lesson of humility is crucial. Often, we chase after accolades, promotions, and titles, thinking that they will bring us true happiness. However, Ignatius's life shows us that real fulfillment comes not from the praise of others, but from living authentically and humbly, grounded in a deeper sense of purpose. The lesson of detachment is also essential in today's world. Ignatius's mystical encounters helped him realize that true peace comes from detaching from material desires and focusing instead on what truly matters. In business, this lesson can be applied by recognizing that success and wealth are not the ultimate goals, but merely tools to achieve a greater purpose. When we detach ourselves from the obsession with success and focus on the well-being of others, we create a more meaningful and sustainable business model. Ignatius's life challenges us to reflect on what truly matters in our careers and personal lives, reminding us that detachment from worldly success can lead to inner peace and greater spiritual fulfillment. One final lesson we can draw from Ignatius's mystical experiences is the power of surrendering to God's will. Ignatius's entire life was marked by a continual surrender to God's plan, even when it meant letting go of his personal ambitions. This lesson of surrender is essential in all areas of life, including business. Surrendering control does not mean abandoning responsibility, but rather trusting that there is a greater plan at work. In our careers, we must recognize that we are part of a larger story, and sometimes the best way to move forward is to let go of our need for control and trust in a higher purpose. Ignatius's life teaches us that true peace and fulfillment come when we surrender to the divine plan, even when the path is uncertain. Ignatius's legacy and its relevance today. Saint Ignatius of Loyola's mystical encounters not only shaped his own life but also influenced generations of followers through the Jesuit order. His legacy of discernment, humility, detachment, and surrender to God's will continues to inspire people around the world. Today, as we face the challenges of modern life, Ignatius's mystical experiences offer timeless wisdom for navigating the complexities of our personal and professional journeys. His life reminds us that spirituality is not separate from our daily lives, it is in every decision, every action, and every relationship. By incorporating the lessons from Ignatius's mystical encounters into our own lives, we can find deeper meaning, purpose, and fulfillment in all that we do. Saint Catherine of Siena, one of the most influential female saints in the Catholic Church, had a life filled with mystical experiences and profound encounters with the divine. Born in 1347 in Siena, Italy, Catherine was the 25th child of a large and devout family. From a young age, she felt a strong calling to dedicate her life to God, and by the age of 16, she entered the Third Order of Saint Dominic. However, it wasn't until later in her life that Catherine began to experience the mystical encounters that would shape her spirituality and legacy. One of the most remarkable aspects of Catherine's mystical life was her ability to experience direct communion with God. She often had profound visions of Christ, the Virgin Mary, and the saints. These divine experiences were not limited to simple dreams or imaginings. They were powerful and tangible encounters that left an indelible mark on her soul. Catherine's experiences were often accompanied by ecstatic states of prayer, where she felt herself physically transported into the presence of God. One of the most famous and significant mystical experiences that Catherine had was during the time of intense prayer and fasting in 1375. While meditating in a small room, Catherine experienced a vision in which she saw Christ himself. In this vision, Christ placed a mystical ring on her finger, a symbol of her spiritual marriage to him. This experience, which Catherine later described in her writings, was a profound moment of union with the divine and marked a turning point in her spiritual journey. The mystical wedding ring became a symbol of her complete devotion and surrender to God's will. Catherine's mystical encounters were not limited to these powerful visions. Throughout her life, she was known to receive locutions, divine messages delivered to her by God or angels. These messages often provided guidance for her own spiritual life and for the Church as a whole. Catherine also experienced the gift of bilocation, a mystical phenomenon where she was able to be in two places at once. On several occasions, she was reported to have appeared in different locations simultaneously, offering counsel and comfort to those in need, even while she was physically present in another place. These extraordinary experiences further solidified Catherine's reputation as a mystic and a woman of great spiritual insight. The mystical experiences and their lessons. Saint Catherine's mystical experiences offer numerous insights that are deeply relevant to our lives today, both personally and professionally. One of the most significant lessons we can learn from her life is the importance of spiritual surrender. Catherine's mystical experiences, particularly her vision of the mystical marriage with Christ, demonstrate the depth of her commitment to God. Her willingness to surrender her own will to God's will was a defining characteristic of her spiritual life. In the same way, we can learn from Catherine's example that true success, whether in business or in personal life, comes from aligning ourselves with a higher purpose and surrendering our desires for control and recognition. In today's fast-paced world, we often chase success without considering whether it aligns with our deeper values and calling. Business leaders, in particular, may feel the pressure to achieve success at any cost, sometimes compromising personal integrity or purpose in the process. Saint Catherine's mystical experiences remind us that true fulfillment comes from aligning our actions with a higher calling. When we surrender to something greater than ourselves, whether that's God's will, our sense of moral responsibility, or a deep commitment to service, we can find a deeper, more meaningful form of success that goes beyond mere material achievement. Another lesson from Catherine's life is the importance of prayer and reflection. Saint Catherine's intense periods of prayer, fasting, and meditation were not just religious exercises, they were deeply transformative experiences that shaped her spiritual life and decision-making. Her ability to receive divine messages through locutions was a result of her disciplined spiritual practice. In today's world, where we are often distracted by the demands of work and life, Catherine's life encourages us to carve out time for quiet reflection, prayer, and introspection. These moments of stillness allow us to connect with our inner selves, gain clarity, and make decisions from a place of wisdom and insight. In business, this lesson is particularly relevant. Leaders and entrepreneurs often face tough decisions and challenges. By making space for reflection and prayer, we can access deeper levels of intuition and insight. This practice of spiritual reflection allows us to make decisions that are not just driven by logic or financial gain, but by a sense of purpose, ethical responsibility, and a desire to serve others. Catherine's life teaches us that prayer is not just a religious duty, but a powerful tool for personal growth and decision-making. Catherine's mystical experiences also demonstrate the power of compassionate action. Despite her profound spiritual encounters, Catherine never withdrew from the world. Instead, she used her experiences to serve others, particularly the poor, the sick, and those in need of spiritual guidance. Her mystical visions were not meant to be private experiences of personal edification. They were meant to inspire her to act on behalf of others. Catherine's commitment to service was rooted in her deep sense of compassion and love for humanity. In the modern business world, this lesson is particularly significant. Often, business can be seen as a competition where the goal is individual success. However, Catherine's life reminds us that business success should be tied to a sense of service and compassion for others. Whether it's through fair treatment of employees, giving back to the community, or ensuring that our work benefits society as a whole, compassionate action is a cornerstone of lasting success. Catherine's mystical experiences show us that true leadership is rooted in a deep care for others and a commitment to using our talents and resources to uplift those around us. Saint Catherine's legacy and its impact today. Saint Catherine's mystical encounters and her life of service left an indelible mark on the Church and on the world. She became a doctor of the Church, one of only 4 women to receive this title. Because of her profound theological writings and her unwavering commitment to the Christian faith, her life continues to inspire millions of people, particularly women, to pursue a life of spiritual depth and service to others. In the context of business and leadership, Saint Catherine's legacy serves as a reminder that success is not measured by wealth or status alone, but by the impact we have on others and our commitment to a higher purpose. Her mystical experiences show us that spiritual insight, compassionate action, and personal reflection are essential components of a fulfilling and successful life, both in business and beyond. As we navigate the complexities of modern life, We can look to Saint Catherine as a model of how to integrate spirituality and service into our daily decisions. Her life teaches us that when we seek to align our actions with a higher calling and a deeper sense of purpose, we can achieve a success that is both meaningful and transformative. The mystical experiences of saints like Saint Francis of Assisi, Saint Ignatius of Loyola, and Saint Catherine of Siena are more than just remarkable events in religious history. They offer profound insights and timeless lessons that transcend the spiritual realm and speak directly to our everyday lives. These experiences, rich with divine encounters, provide us with guidance on how to navigate the complexities of modern existence, whether in our personal lives, in business, or in our spiritual journeys. One of the most significant lessons we can learn from these saints is the transformative power of faith and perseverance. Each of these saints faced tremendous personal trials. St. Francis with his renunciation of wealth and his embrace of poverty. Saint Ignatius with his radical shift from worldly ambition to spiritual dedication. And Saint Catherine with her mystical experiences amid social and political turmoil. Through each of their stories, we learn that even in the face of adversity, faith in a higher purpose and a deep commitment to one's calling can lead to extraordinary transformation. In business, this lesson resonates profoundly. Success does not come without sacrifice, and true growth often requires overcoming difficult challenges. These saints did not achieve greatness without first enduring hardship, and neither can we. Whether it's in overcoming financial difficulties, personal setbacks, or navigating a competitive market, the path to success is rarely easy. However, like the saints, we can find strength in faith and perseverance, knowing that every challenge is an opportunity for growth. The concept of spiritual discernment is another invaluable lesson that can be applied to our modern lives. Saint Ignatius of Loyola, in particular, taught us the importance of discernment in every aspect of our lives, both personal and professional. Ignatius's method of prayerful decision-making, carefully considering the desires of our hearts and aligning them with a higher calling, offers profound wisdom for today's fast-paced, goal-oriented world. In business, where decisions are often made under pressure, Ignatius's practice of reflective prayer and discernment teaches us to slow down and consider the deeper motivations behind our actions. Are we pursuing a goal because it aligns with our higher values? Or is it merely driven by external pressures? Ignatius's mystical encounters guide us to seek clarity, to pause, and to ensure that our decisions are rooted in a sense of purpose rather than fleeting desires. Taking time for spiritual reflection is not a luxury, it is a necessity for achieving true success. Moreover, humility and detachment are central themes in the lives of these saints. Particularly Saint Francis and Saint Catherine. Their willingness to renounce personal glory in favor of serving others reveals the power of humble leadership. In a world that often glorifies power, fame, and material wealth, the stories of these saints remind us that the highest form of leadership is rooted in service to others. Saint Francis's embrace of poverty was not about rejecting the material world entirely, but about understanding that true fulfillment lies not in accumulation, but in sharing, giving, and living simply. Similarly, Saint Catherine's life shows us that true greatness is measured by how we serve the most vulnerable and how we embody compassion, humility, and grace in our daily interactions. In the context of business, this lesson challenges us to reconsider what success really means. Are we using our positions of power and influence to serve others? Or are we merely seeking self-interest? Leadership is not about dominating others but about lifting them up, creating environments where people can thrive, and using our resources for the betterment of society. Detachment from worldly desires, as demonstrated by these saints, also teaches us the importance of focusing on the essentials in life. In the busyness of modern life, we are constantly bombarded with distractions, both material and emotional, that pull us away from our true purpose. Saint Ignatius's mystical experiences and his profound insight into the spiritual practice of detachment remind us that true peace comes when we learn to let go of our attachment to material possessions, status, and approval. This is not to say that we should abandon ambition or the pursuit of success, but rather that we should approach these goals with a mindset of detachment, understanding that they are tools, not the ultimate source of our happiness. By focusing on our deeper values and connecting with our spiritual selves, we can find contentment and fulfillment that no external circumstance can take away. Perhaps one of the most inspiring lessons from the mystical experiences of these saints is the call to embrace service and compassion in our lives. Saint Catherine of Siena's life is a shining example of this principle. Despite her intense mystical encounters, she never withdrew from the world. Instead, she used her spiritual experiences to fuel her tireless efforts to help others, particularly the poor and disenfranchised. Her writings and actions showed that spiritual experiences are not meant to be self-serving. They are meant to inspire us to act in the world with love, kindness, and compassion. In today's world, where individualism often takes precedence, the lives of these saints challenge us to remember that our success should be intertwined with our ability to positively impact the lives of others. In the business world, this means looking beyond profits and focusing on how our actions and decisions affect employees, customers, and communities. The true test of leadership is not in how many people follow us, but in how many lives we can positively impact through our work. Finally, the mystical experiences of these saints call us to recognize the divine in every aspect of our lives. Saint Francis's encounters with nature, Saint Ignatius's discernment, and Saint Catherine's locutions all remind us that the divine is not distant or abstract, but present in every moment of our lives. Whether we are at work, with family, or in solitude, the presence of the divine can guide and inspire us if we are open to it. By embracing this mindset, we can find meaning and purpose in every action, no matter how small. In business, this perspective allows us to approach our work with a sense of reverence and responsibility, recognizing that our actions have far-reaching consequences and that our work can contribute to the greater good. As we look to the future, the mystical experiences of these saints offer a roadmap for navigating the challenges and complexities of modern life. They remind us that true success is not measured by external achievements, but by the depth of our inner transformation, our commitment to a higher purpose, and our ability to serve others. By embracing the lessons of faith, discernment, humility, detachment, compassion, and divine presence, we can create lives and businesses that are not only successful in the worldly sense but are also deeply fulfilling and meaningful. In the end, the lives of these saints show us that the greatest gift we can offer to the world is a life lived in service, guided by spiritual insight, and dedicated to a higher purpose. Whether in business, personal life, or in our communities, we can all draw inspiration from their mystical experiences to lead lives that are full of purpose, compassion, and divine meaning.